Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 100th episode of the Word of the Day podcast, where useful words are pleasantly explained. My name is Silva, I am your host, and on most shows, I think this would be the customary time to make some heartwarming comments about, what a milestone this is, and how when we started this humble program over 3 years ago, we never imagined that we'd still be going strong 100 episodes in, and how it's loyal listeners like you that make us excited to bring you useful word after useful word, episode after episode after episode. Now, we're not going to wallow in all that sentimental stuff, because on this show, we like to just get right down to business, and that means welcoming to today's program a friend and fellow language enthusiast, Kaylin. Kaylin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if everyone's settled, let's talk about today's word, shall we? This is the noun desuetude, which I would define as a state of disuse or obsolescence. And I guess I should define obsolescence while I'm at it. This comes from the adjective obsolete, meaning no longer produced or used, out of date. So very much the same idea.
Google's definition is basically a mirror image of yours.
Yes.
Quote, a state of disuse. By way of example, if you wanted to say that no one knows how to darn their own socks anymore, you might observe that the art of sewing has fallen into desuetude.
Sure, and you could say, by extension, that the time-honored traits of resourcefulness, frugality, and self-sufficiency seem to have fallen into desuetude, since in olden times, no one would dream of throwing away a perfectly good pair of socks merely because they had a little hole in the toe.
Indeed. Now, a couple of quick usage notes. Desuetude typically follows the words fallen into, or lapsed into, or some equivalent. Also, it doesn't just refer to objects or concrete things, as in the sentence, Uggs are so out they've descended into desuetude. Rather, the word can also refer to practices, customs, or ideas.
This means that it would also be fine to say the practice of wearing Uggs in all seasons and with all outfits has lapsed into desuetude.
To put it into modern, colloquial terms, if something has fallen into desuetude, it's just not a thing anymore. It's over. People don't do it. Or only really antiquated, stodgy old people do it.
Quick question. Is it still a thing to say that things aren't a thing?
I think it's still a thing. Have you heard any different?
No, I haven't. I would hate it if a phrase that we on the show imply is a hip and current colloquialism has actually fallen into desuetude,
Oh, well, sure. I get that. It's a real risk. Contemporary slang slips into desuetude all the time, and trendy terms are often swiftly forgotten as new references and idioms take their place. But I actually think this is a really interesting and cool feature of language. It's so hard to predict which popular new terms will stick around, and which will have their 15-minute/couple of years of fame, and then more or less disappear from the common lexicon.
And Kaylin, is the common lexicon a fancy phrase meaning the vocabulary commonly heard in ordinary conversation?
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I agree. The fact that hip and popular words and phrases come and go willy-nilly is a really neat feature of language.
It's just swell, isn't it?
It's groovy.
It's just peachy.
It's off the chain.
It's super rad.
It's hecka tight.
It's legit.
It's lit.
It's so dope.
It's the bomb.
Don't you mean the bomb diggity?
Oh, no, I meant thebomb.com.
Nice.
Oh, it's so fetch.
Nope.
What?
You know what?
No, I don't.
You're still trying to make fetch happen.
It's gonna happen, Kaylin, just if I say it a few more times.
It's really not, Jamie.
Oh, that's a shame. Anyway, so, folks, as this list of passé, old-timey, and obsolete alternatives to the word cool makes clear, words and phrases and sayings are among the many things that fall into desuetude over time.
Entire languages can even disappear. Latin is the classic example of a dead language, but there are so many more, both throughout history and even today. Of the world's approximately 6,900 languages spoken in the world today, linguists estimate that over half could die out by the end of the century, and around a quarter of them already have less than 1,000 remaining speakers.
Which is rather sad, especially when you consider how much of culture and its stories are housed in and expressed via language. When a language dies, you lose a lot more than just the words. Now, this show can't really help keep dying languages around, but within English, there is something we can do. And in a way, it's what this whole show is about. Taking words that are slipping out of common use and trying to give listeners the knowledge and confidence they need to start saying them once again. thus keeping those words alive and thriving.
So you could say you're trying to keep these words from falling into desuetude.
Precisely.
It's a worthy calling. Now, getting back to the word desuetude. This has a really interesting parallel in French, where the word désuet is an adjective meaning old-fashioned, obsolete, or out of date.
And there's actually this really delightful French song called Desuetude by Stacey Kent that whimsically argues that the only things that never truly go out of style are those things that are out of style to begin with. Let's listen to a quick snippet of the refrain, shall we?
Pendant que s'écroulent les mots et les tours, plein de certitude. Seul le désuet ne tombe jamais en désuétude.
In the key line there, seul le désuet ne tombe jamais en désuétude, you can hear both the words désuet and desuetude, or desuetude, which has the same meaning and spelling in both French and English. The line translates to, only the obsolete never goes out of style, / never falls into desuetude.
That has a certain logic to it, I suppose. We'll post the full song to the Facebook page so you all can enjoy it yourselves.
Now, if there are any lawyers listening, they might be saying to themselves, when are these guys going to get to the legal sense of desuetude? The answer is, right now. Desuetude is a legal doctrine which says that laws that no one follows and haven't been enforced for a super long time become obsolete and unenforceable, even if technically they're still on the books.
There's actually a lot of laws in this kind of limbo, as legislatures tend to be much more enthusiastic about enacting new laws than repealing old ones. Hence, over time, as statutes lose their relevance and everyone ignores them, including law enforcement, if someone actually attempted to, say, sue someone for breaking them, or a very zealous policeman arrested someone for it, the courts might refuse to convict them on the grounds that no one takes that law seriously, if they've heard of it at all. No one's been punished for violating it for basically infinity, and we're not going to start now, for goodness sake.
By way of example, think of those lists of weird state or city laws that occasionally make the rounds. Like in Arkansas, it's illegal to honk a car horn outside of a sandwich shop after 9 p.m. Before 9 p.m., presumably you can honk all you want.
Yep, and in Arizona, donkeys may not sleep in bathtubs.
In Florida, if you quote-unquote park an animal in a parking space, such as a horse, elephant, or camel, you are still responsible for paying any parking fees.
Detonating nuclear weapons is illegal in Chico, California.
In New York, 2 or more people may not wear masks in public, unless of course it's Halloween or you're attending a masquerade ball.
And so on and so forth. Now, the Word of the Day legal team has requested that we state clearly for the record that, first, we aren't lawyers, Kaylin and I, and this is not legal advice. And second, with the exception of West Virginia, U.S. state and federal courts don't recognize the legal principle of desuetude, and instead say that the law is the law, and they won't refuse to apply it merely because it hasn't been enforced in ages.
That's right. So if you listen to the show and make it your mission to find lots of old-timey, probably obsolete laws, and then violate them on purpose, and then you get into trouble, well, don't say we didn't warn you.
Okay, it's now time to get a couple examples of how to use desuetude in ordinary conversation or writing. Example number 1. Although the tradition of caroling has fallen into desuetude over the years, the Vaughn family still trotted door to door every December, bundled up in their Christmas best, regaling their neighbors with songs of the season.
Example number 2. Talia's favorite childhood park, which brought back so many nostalgic memories, had fallen into desuetude, exhibiting neglect through its broken playground equipment and overgrown greenery.
Example number 3 comes from the book Maître Cornelius by Honoré de Balzac. Quote, "Suddenly all the bells in the town rang out the curfew, a custom fallen elsewhere into desuetude, but still observed in the provinces, where venerable habits are abolished slowly." Unquote.
And for those of you who don't know, traditionally a curfew is a time in the evening after which certain restrictions go into place. In a city, a curfew usually meant that everyone who was out and about had to return to their homes. I'm kind of glad this custom is in desuetude, actually.
Same here. Well, with the examples out of the way, I think we're approaching the end of today's program. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you, Kaylin, for joining me.
You're quite welcome, Jamie.
And, Kaylin, since this is the time to tout the official Word of the Day Facebook and Instagram pages, which, folks, feel free to check out, perhaps you'd like to give a quick shout out to your page.
I sure would. I started up an Instagram page a couple of years ago because I was looking for inspiring linguistics pages and couldn't quite find one that fit the bill, so I created it myself. It pairs my travel photography with linguistics captions, such as language jokes and fun facts, quotes in other languages, language history, research relating to language acquisition and speech-language pathology, which I'm studying right now, untranslatable words, and excerpts from books about language and linguistics. The page is called @travel_linguist.
Yeah, folks, it's a great follow. I've learned lots of fun and interesting language tidbits from it, and I think you will too, not to mention the superior photography. Once again, that Instagram account is travel_linguist. All right, time to sign off. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Word of the Day podcast, where useful words are pleasantly explained. I'm your host, Jamie Silva, saying so long from the RAV4 studios, and until next season, which should appear in a couple of months, as always, have a great